It's a big recruiting week for the Huskies. Lots of stuff on tap. You're locked on UConn.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we dive into today's show, just want to take a quick moment to ask for a small favor. If you're enjoying the content here, please take a second to subscribe to the show. Follow the audio versions wherever you get your podcasts, and it really helps the show grow. Makes me happy. It means the world to me. Keeps us going strong every day, all the people behind the scenes. Also, every follow, subscription, YouTube, like, audio download of the podcast helps create more revenue for UConn NAL. That's right. Locked On UConn is giving a 10% donation to Bleeding Blue for Good. So by supporting Locked On UConn, you directly affect the UConn athletic program. Thanks so much for being a part of this community. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all caps, for $20 off your first purchase. Well, yesterday we had on Jake Weingartner, the founder of Stock Risers, really locked in on the recruiting game, was a fantastic guest. So I started doing a little deeper dive, and UConn's Dan Hurley he's got a loaded recruiting day tomorrow. He'll be in for both top 25 seniors, Eric Reibe and Reibe. I keep saying his name wrong, damn it. And Braylon Mullins. Kansas Bill Self will also be in for Reibe this afternoon. So the Braylon Mullins situation is an interesting one. And I will say this. I have nothing negative to say about Braylon. He is a phenomenal kid. I am so excited about his recruitment. Want nothing more than for him to be a Husky. But I've seen a couple of these. I want to read I think it was a message to my YouTube. I don't even know if it was directed to me, but this was something that I've read, and I think this kind of goes to sometimes the delusions of the fan bases when they really don't have an idea of what the recruitment process is. I'm not sitting here saying I'm Adrian Wojnarowski and I have all the answers, or Shams, or an insider. People have labeled me that. I'm just a guy who creates relationships with coaches, sometimes parents of the recruits, because I don't know, because I've said some nice things about them in the past, or, people trust me for that reason. I don't really put anybody out there. I've had numerous messages that I could have said from such and such person. I don't do that. So I think that's part of it too, is at least my brand for now is that I tell it like it is and kind of give an idea of what I think is going on. This quote is it's not negative. It's fairly delusional. So this is a quote from a Kentucky fan. So the Braylon Mullins situation is a fairly common one that I've seen 100 times in recruiting. To be honest, I think Mullen's family is enamored with Pope in UK, but it feels to me like they're trying to find reasons to say yes to Kentucky when a more sensible result seems to be UConn. The only new wrinkle here would be NIL, and UK will likely have a better NIL situation than UConn. Not sure it would make a major difference. Distance to home also makes UK a bit better option than otherwise. So let me address that right away. Kentucky is out of the Braylon Mullins sweepstakes. They just are. I've heard way too many reputable people tell me that. So if that changes, because circumstances all the time can change like the wind. And I'm reminded of a comment from someone in my own YouTube section that said, these guys are kids. They probably change their mind 100 times a day. And that is 100% true. So when someone says such and such team is out, I take it with a grain of salt. But when multiple people tell me it's not, the UK is, or Kentucky is not in the picture, then I start to pay attention. So if that changes, I will be the first one to say I was wrong. But I'm not in this instance. Remember, to anyone listening, I don't think Braylon is a one-and-done guy. I just don't. I think Braylon is a 2 to 3 year college guy who can transform himself into an elite NBA player. He's shooting up the boards now a 5-star. So why wouldn't he go to Kentucky? Because if let's say he goes to Indiana and doesn't love it, like Kentucky meaning like on a visit, because I know people are saying, well, he's still going on a visit. Because let's say he goes to Indiana, which is where I'm predicting him to go, and he doesn't love it because of the coaching or whatever. He can transfer. Kids don't typically cancel visits these days unless they absolutely can't see themselves playing there, as to not waste a coach's time or theirs. So for Duke and Tennessee, that makes sense. Tennessee not known to cultivate great shooters. Dalton Knecht was an established player already. Braylon is making the transition to college high major ball. And Duke is a one and done factor. Let's just call it what it is. He wants someone to coach him and coach him hard. Probably the only reason Kentucky is still in the mix, because Mark Pope is a good coach. He's established a good culture at BYU in the past. He's going to be fine at UK. And it truly will come down to, from all the sources I've spoken to, Indiana versus UConn. What I did see for Kentucky fans, and this also affects UConn, is the potential of Jasper Johnson, Caleb Wilson, and Nikaden Lewis all going to University of Kentucky. Or Kentucky University. I'm not either way. KU. Jasper, Akaden, and Caleb had a little fun last night on Twitter with all the fan bases liking and retweeting it and such, and about how that was the rumor that they're all going to come together and play together. So I don't know if they're trolling us, but that's 100% more likely than Braylon going to Lexington. So don't get your hopes up, UK fans. He's likely doing this out of respect and future considerations. On the same note, UConn fans, don't get too excited. Sorry, had a burp. So I just wouldn't get excited as of yet. It's probably going to be November before we hear anything about Braylon. But again, I repeat, Indiana versus UConn on this. Why do I think UConn is the better fit? Some obvious reasons. I'm going to give you 10. 1, proven coach. 2, better program. 3, more recent success. I don't know, back-to-back. 4, just sent 6 players to the NBA over the last 2 seasons. Mostly guards. 5, Dan Hurley. 6, Kamani Young. 7, Luke Murray. 8, Tom Moore. 9, all of UConn Nation. 10, you'll never regret going to a place where they make it harder in practice than any game you've ever played. The new rankings came out in this, ranking for outside entities, as Daniel Hurley likes to call them. Braylon is all the way up to number 16 in the country. Again, now a 5-star recruit. Last season, that last reason I know this kid is a Hurley kid, and the other targets as well, Reibe, Bundalo, Darius Adams, the ones I feel like we have a real shot on. Braylon's dad, Josh, was a hooper himself. Got himself a full ride at IUPUI. He averaged about 12 points a game on 45% three-point shooting, so he knows a thing or two about shooting the rock. And that's exactly the type of person that Dan wants, is that your dad understands the process of playing in college basketball, respect of that, everything that goes with it, hard worker, etc. Darius Adams dropped out of the top 20, but he's still in that 4 or 5-star cusp. I think he's 22nd in this poll. Darius's dad, Dennis, started the Jersey Warriors AAU program and also coached Darius's sisters in basketball. Perfect profile for a Hurley guy. Coach's son in New Jersey. Andrew Hurley is probably like, get that kid. Do you guys see where I'm going with this? Dan Hurley has said time and time again, we recruit the parents more so than the kids. The kids already know they're good. Like, we already get their talent is undeniable, but it's the parents that end up telling on themselves and therefore kind of turns the coaches off about coaching their kids. Let's go to Nico Bundalo. His dad, Alexander, and mother, Dusanka, are Nico's parents, right? They're Serbian refugees. Nico was born here in the States. If you're looking for old school values, look no further than those who have that immigrant mentality. And as a kid who has immigrant parents, when you escape a country that's war torn to seek a better life for your children, they instill those values in you. Checks out. Nico, hardest worker, a guy that Jake Weingartner talked about as probably has a top 10 upside in his game for this class in the country. That checks out. Eric Reibe, everything I've heard about, haven't heard much about his parents, couldn't find much, but This kid is a worker. If they're in this stage now, Dan Hurley is not, and his staff is not going after kids time and time again if they didn't feel comfortable bringing them in at that offer. And I say those things to say, and I didn't do a due diligence on this, but the kids that he is kind of backed off on, and I got some heat from this a long time ago about how, like, I said something about Meleek Thomas, and essentially that, you know, the Hurleys were, and his staff was like, you know what, we're probably not going to go all in on him. And I've heard some things about all of the scheduling that he does. Like, he changes his schedule constantly. He's canceling visits. He's doing this. So there's not only the Huskies, but, you know, people at Arkansas, Alabama are not exactly enamored with how he's handling the recruiting process. They feel like he's immature. So to me, there's too many red flags with Meleek, and I wouldn't be opposed to him coming to UConn. I can say that right now. I just don't think there's a chance they even want him here anymore. If you walked up to Dan Hurley and said, I'm coming, I think there would have to be a conversation like, yeah, we can do that, but we want some assurances that this is an aberration, right? They're so protective of their process. I've watched way too many interviews where he talks about the culture and what he does from a leadership perspective. And if he doesn't respect your grind, it doesn't respect what you do behind the scenes, he's not going to respect you as a person or as a basketball player, no matter how good you are. So coming up, let's talk about what kind of combinations are we looking at. If we land 3 recruits, I feel like that's the target. 2 maybe, but I think the magic number for this class is 3. There's too many good players, and they got their hands in quite a few. Let's pay some bills, and we'll come back and talk about it. You've heard us talk all about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, right now we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get 3 free weeks of NFL Sunday tickets. So that's a free trial on YouTube or YouTube TV. Once you get that done, all you need is a YouTube TV base plan. You'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon game, out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you'll be able to cancel at any time. If that's not enough, be sure to check out FanDuel's Profit Boost in the app and use it for FanDuel's double your winnings for all of Sunday's 9:15. And also, this is for next week for 9:19 and 9:22. Probably the last week we're doing this because of the free trial ends September 22nd. So go to visit FanDuel.com and check it out. America's #1 sportsbook. Get that free trial, guys. Okay, we're back on Locked On UConn. Hope you guys can go get some stuff with FanDuel and figure that all out. Would love for everyone to kind of figure out that free trial. Real quick, let's pay one more bill and talk about Game Time. What's up, everybody? Let's figure out how you can get to some events this year. It shouldn't be stressful, right? Well, with Game Time, it's never been easier. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for your sports, concerts, and shows near you with killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee. You can stop stressing over the seats and start getting hyped for the game or concert. Plus, use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app and create an account and use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all caps, for $20 off. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, guys. Sorry about that little brief interruption. And now we're back. Get your Game Time stuff. Go get your Sunday ticket if you can through FanDuel. Would love for you guys to take advantage of that. So where do we go from here? I want to put up on the screen. I've the returning team obviously plays into a lot of these dominoes dropping, and we're going to talk about some combinations, some thought process here. I haven't really dove too deep into this, so this is going to be on the fly, but I think we can definitely talk about it. So I'm going to put up if you're watching on YouTube, the returning team. Obviously, if you're listening as an audio listener, I'll walk you through this. Our returning players are obviously Alex Garabin, Samson Johnson, Hassan Diarra, Solo Ball, Jalen Stort, Jaden Ross, Yusef Singari, Terrace Reed Jr., Aiden Mahaney, Isaiah Abraham is a freshman, Ahmad Noel, freshman, and Liam McNeely. So, what does that have to do with this conversation? Everything. Because if we're talking about players that we're recruiting, the people that are leaving are if you're watching on YouTube, are the top 3. They are guaranteed to be gone. Alex Caravan, Samson Johnson, and Hassan Diarra. Bye-bye. I love you guys. I hope we win a 3rd championship in a row with you guys. But after this season, they're forever Huskies, but they just won't be playing basketball for us. So what does that mean? It means that we need to fill 3 slots. So it makes a lot of sense to figure out 3 players that would fill those roles. And then you may say, well, Mark, you have a power forward or center. Then you have another power forward, wing, small forward, and Alex Caravan and a point guard. So why are we only, it seems like we're going after guards and a couple of bigs and not so many wings. Well, if you look at it like this, guys, we have, in my perfect scenario, I'm talking about perfect scenario, not who I think they're going to get, but who I want. You'd have Braylon Mullins. Who does he remind you guys of? Cam Spencer, probably a smaller version of Alex Caravan because of his instincts and basketball IQ. From what I've heard, it's off the charts. I've only seen film. He's fantastic. So that's number 1. Number 2, one of the bigs, Nico or Eric. Let's say it's Eric. He would replace Samson Johnson. And barring Yusef Singari not transferring, he would kind of get the nod as that elder statesman, kind of showing the ropes to the incoming freshman, and that's the rotation. If you were to get Nico Bundalo as well, then you have the 3-headed monster that they have right now, which is Samson Johnson, Yusef Singari, and Terrace Reed. So I think there's a lot of ways you can play this because Nico is more of a power forward. So if you were to get Nico, you could definitely slide him into the Alex Caravan position in terms of not to replace him, but this kind of that thought process. Because again, barring transfers, you still have solo ball. Jay Stu may go to the pros. That's iffy, right? Liam McNeely also maybe considering going one and done. So that's also why it's important that this class is, I feel like at least is 3 deep, because there's some uncertainty about after this season if Liam stays after this year, if Jaden Ross does transfers because he doesn't get enough minutes, or Yusef, same situation. Jay Stu has an incredible breakout year, hopefully, fingers crossed, right? That's what we expect. And he's starting to get first-round evaluations, and he goes after his sophomore year. So it's just not so clear cut, and there's a lot of ambiguous nature to all of this. So they're recruiting based off of what ifs. What if, and then what would the combos be next year? So I think an incredible combo next year would be to have if this is assuming that Liam and Jalen Stewart are both staying for a sophomore and junior year. So let's say that's the case. So you have Liam McNeely, Jalen Stewart are in the starting lineup, obviously. Then you'd have some combo of solo ball, Aiden Mahaney, and obviously Ahmad Noel. Right? So you probably have your starters out of those, or close to your starters out of those 5. Add Terrace into the mix there because you're going to probably play one big at least, right? I don't think Yusef is going to elevate to a starter after just 1 year, and he may end up looking in other directions. I hope not. Seems like a great kid. People love him. The vibes are there. I think his play is going to catch up to that. So there's a lot of ways you can go. So now, if you add a Braylon Mullins to the mix, if you add an Eric Reibe, it pushes the Terrace Reeds of the world to get better. It pushes, adding Braylon Mullins adds another wrinkle to how much quicker can Aiden Mahaney get better from this season to the next. Same thing with solo ball. And then Isaiah Abraham is another one that I think is got an unlimited potential and upside. It just makes them, they're deep right now. And I think Hurley loves the idea of keeping this kind of talent around at all times. Because if you heard him in that Graham Bensiker interview, he talks about the advantage that he has as a coach right now is how he affects practice on a daily basis. By adding 3 top 25, top 30 recruits to this team, or top 50 recruits, even if you want to go that deep, it immediately elevates them to even deeper than they are this year. Because, and this is nothing against any of these players, but Liam was a top 10 recruit, Ahmad was a top 30, and Isaiah was a top 60. So as they're winning more championships, the access to recruits is getting higher, and them adding Braylon, Nico, Eric, or Darius Adams, Caden Lewis, whoever they end up attracting, 2-3 guys, it's only going to help. It's only going to help continue to fortify the dynasty and the destiny that UConn is creating under Dan Hurley and staff. I think the thing that's funny, not funny, but the thing that to note about all of this is and I know Dan Hurley hates it, and a part of me hates it too, because it's just so much like conjecture, like a lot of these conversations are. They're fun conversations. It's fun to think about the future, especially as we're 48 days away from college basketball season. But I will tell you that the transfer portal again will explode. And also the reason why I feel like larger classes are going to start being more of a thing now is not because people are trying to copycat Duke or Kentucky with these super classes, but because the COVID years are over. There's no more going into the portal and getting a four-year guy and saying, come do your 5th year with us and have all of this experience. And you come in and you get that ready-made, 15, 16 point score. Even in the transfer portal, a kid like Aiden Mahaney averaged 13 points a game last year. And I don't know if he's being asked to duplicate that this year. We don't know. So the point is that you can get guys to come in and be players, but the idea that you can't get Cam Spencer anymore, just can't. So that's why you're getting Terrace Reed and Aiden Mahaney that have multiple years left to kind of hone their skills. And those are the type of players you're going to have to start to look for in the transfer portal. So that's why I feel like this class is so important to Hurley. And I think that this is something it's going to affect the rest of the program going forward. I don't have much else on this, because the only thing that makes me uncomfortable talking about this is who transfers and why. I don't want any of these guys to transfer. I don't want Solo, Jaden, Jay Stu, Singari, any of the guys that have been mentioned as potential transfers. I've even saw like Ahmad Noel, because we're targeting point guards in this year's draft. So if Hassan Diarra taught you anything, it's that you can still win and be a part of a championship program and still get yours. So take that for what it's worth. So I think that this team is going to continue to be a deep squad. And we're always going to be talking about how tough it is for Dan Hurley to play 9, 10, 11 guys every year, because they're just going to keep reloading. When we come back, let's see what this looks like if we don't get what we want. We don't get the guys we want. How will we react to that? Coming up after this. Hey, UConn fans, have you heard of ROY? We talked about it earlier in the week. It stands for Return on You. And it's a new platform that lets you get involved in NIL like never before. By supporting players directly, you can help shape rosters, retain talent, and keep your favorite athletes from entering the transfer portal. Just something we just talked about. As we all know, NIL has changed the game for athletes and really for everybody. And ROY is changing the NIL game for us fans. Here's why ROY is different. You guys all know that I give 10% of my podcast revenue to Bleeding Blue for Good. That's the NIL collective. This is different than a collective. You get to do it directly to the athlete. There's a no-risk contribution for fans, and it's securely held and only distributed if the athlete makes the decision that aligns with the fan support. So if you're giving money to, let's just throw spaghetti on the wall, to Liam McNeely to stay one more year, don't go to the pros, all that money accrues and he stays, that money is released. If not, it comes back to the fan. You get to engage with the athlete on their NIL journey by using ROY. Fans not only support athletes financially, but also become part of the NIL journey, helping them succeed both on and off the field. So this is different from giving money to the collective, as we mentioned. But download ROY for the iOS or Android, whatever you use. Enter referral code LOCKED ON, 2 words, to automatically be entered into sweepstakes to win $5,000. What do you got to lose? Visit joinroy.com for more details. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Get off the sidelines and into the NIL game with Roy. All right, we're back on Locked On UConn. Okay. I don't have much for this. We've done already about 25 minutes on the recruiting and different combinations of what will happen the following year before we even played a game this year. So I understand that. So no matter what, no matter who we get, I have full confidence, as should all UConn fans, in this coaching staff and their ability to get the best out of their players. Also, as an aside, I love when haters from other schools talk smack and, the Duke teams are saying, fans are, oh, we live rent free in your head. And Kentucky's talking about how we're a poverty program. Whatever you guys want to say, it's all fair game. As long as it doesn't get personal, I'm cool with it. One of my favorite recruits, if one of your favorite recruits chooses a different school, I ask, please just wish them well. Try to understand it. Even if you don't get it, try to understand it from their perspective. But because, as we talk about from time and time again, Dan Hurley isn't for everyone. In fact, I'd be willing to bet that 90% of our fan base in the greater New England area and around the country, I don't think they could handle the type of pressure that Dan Hurley puts on his staff and players on a daily basis. And we love him for it from afar. But realize that these are kids. If you have kids, you probably understand you don't want to put too much pressure on them. Old school values are great, and I live them every day. I think hard work matters. I think accountability matters. But if a kid doesn't choose UConn and he picks Kentucky or Indiana or Oregon or Duke or whatever, don't tweet out he's a loser mentality. Or I'll be the first to admit I probably 100% had those thoughts. Maybe even tweeted out as a younger man, even as an older man who I was stupid and definitely didn't mean to cause any harm, but if I did that, I was definitely wrong. So I just really want to implore our fan base to not be the insufferable a-holes that we can be when it comes to the recruiting process, because we're great fans. We have passionate fans. We have crazy fans. We have relentless fans that just constantly want to see the best basketball possible. And Dan Hurley has brought that to us. But trust me, this process, at the end of it, we're going to have kids who are going to come in and give their all and bleed blue just like you do, just like I do. And I'm excited to see who that is. Obviously, like I said, I want certain players. Life's not fair. You don't always get what you want. But I will always be rooting for these kids because life's too short. I want to see them succeed. So anyway, thank you for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. So thank you to my everydayers. But wherever you get a chance for your second listen, check out Locked On College Football. From the NIL's deals to never-ending conference realignment rumors, Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. Find Locked On College Football on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. This has been another episode of Locked On UConn. Also, guys, remember, my wife is due in 2 days. So next week, I'll have some special shows for you pre-recorded, and we'll be back taking more relevant news by the end of next week. But I say that to say when this comes out, just know next week if you see a random show that kind of seems out of place, I'm tending to other matters. I'm your host, Mark Zanetto, asking you to stay locked in, stay connected, make sure that toughness meter is always rising. And as always, go Huskies.